Hi, good evening, and a very warm welcome to one and all over here for our last session for the Love of You series. And this was in collaboration with IEC. Today's topic and guest both are very extremely special and something that's extremely close to my heart as well. And we're going to talk on the lines of support and hope, how to support a loved one, how a survivor wants to be supported, and what can we do as a community and as friends and family to support the ones we love who are suffering. And I'm going to have with me Abhishek. He's going to join in a couple of seconds. So yes, I'll just wait for him to join in. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them in and we shall take that. So good to see so many familiar names joining in. Hello, hi, how are you? I am good, thank you. So I'm just going to talk a little about Abhishek till he joins in, and post that we could start with the questions that we have in. Yeah, he's here, so I'm just going to add him. Hi. I think there seems to be some technical issue because I'm unable to add him, but let's just try once. Yes, Abhishek, I know that you're here. I'm trying to add you again and again, but there seems to be some sort of an issue because of which I'm unable to add you with me on the live. I have also accepted the request, so and have sent you an invitation to join as well. Hello, Umesh, how are you doing? So good to see you joining in. I have gotten a notification that you're unable to join in, Abhishek. Just a second. Could you send me a request? Yeah, sure. I'll wait. Okay, so till then, a little about Abhishek. He is a user survivor who was diagnosed in 2007 with bipolar and since then has been grappling with this condition and has now found a functional equilibrium. He is also the founder of an NGO known as Blue Ribbon and Kehkasha, which is a peer-led support group for people with depression and bipolar. And yeah, he's here. Let me just try in once again to add him in. Finally, this is. Hi! Am I audible?
Hi. Yes, you are. Give me a moment.
Yeah, but I can't hear you as
Hello.
clearly. Your voice.
Can you hear
Yeah.
me? Hello.
Yes.
Is better now?
Yes, much
Okay, lovely.
better. So I was just telling
Okay,
our
great.
viewers today, giving them a little introduction about you, and of course about Blue Ribbon and
Hmm.
Kehkasha. So would you also like to shed some light upon that? What do these two organizations do, and what has it been like for you?
What did कहकशा do? कहकशा was like really वो जो हम सफ़र मिल जाते हैं ना, हम सफ़र और जो सेम लैंग्वेज वाले हम सफ़र और हम जुबाओं का सफ़र था because depressed people, bipolar people meeting each other, hearing each other, not feeling alone. So Kehkasha was like a peer-led support group that we were doing. It takes one mentally ill person to deeply empathize with another, I feel.
True.
And so that's what Kehkasha was about. Blue Ribbon really is about responding to the crisis of today and building leadership that responds to the challenges of today's times through community work with young people.
Right.
So that's Blue Ribbon in short.
That's lovely. That's really great that you've been doing both of these. So, even in the pandemic, you've been working with both of these organizations. I mean, both are still working towards helping people.
No, Kehkasha actually started and stopped almost thrice. I think thrice I started it and stopped it because my own mental health could not permit me to continue it. Blue Ribbon continues, of course, and does listening spaces through the pandemic and yeah, all sorts of things.
No doubt, I
So
have
yeah.
so many people in that case telling me, so good to see you, bhai. It's so good to see you back. So, absolutely. And I'm glad that we're doing this live. So, Abhishek, talking on to the same lines, like you mentioned that you are a user survivor. How was the diagnosis back in 2007? Because till date, with regards to mental health, there is a lot of stigma and lack of awareness that still exists. So possibly when you were diagnosed with bipolar back then, how was it like? Were you able to accept it, or were you in denial for a couple of days or months together? What was it like for you?
Yeah, 2007. Nobody knew. I would say nobody knew bipolar. I did not know the term till I came out of my mental asylum actually. I mean, I was told later कि भाई तुम्हें bipolar हुआ है.
Hmm.
Uh, awareness was really, really low. Like none of us had any idea.
Hmm.
Depression was still known, but bipolar wasn't. So it was really hard. It's like some asteroid hit you from deep space and you didn't know what was going on. Like I felt like that. So the diagnosis was very sudden,
Hmm.
very unexpected, very unreal almost, and brought my life kind of crashing down, I guess. So it was tough,
Yeah.
tough to accept. Yeah, yeah.
Right. So, in this process, you might have come across a lot of practitioners and therapists and psychiatrists and all. So, what was the role that they played in your life? I mean, how did it help you? And to be very honest, sometimes their point of view might not match with yours. So, was there anything in specific that was a hindrance in your case?
So there are two, three questions there, so I'll try and answer each one. I think no problem. I think therapists and psychiatrists are like lifelines. You have to hold on to them. They're really, really central to the recovery process. Mental health is not something that one can manage by themselves. One needs help. So I'm very clear about that, right? That one needs that for sure. I met a lot along the way, and your chemistry with them, it's almost like falling in love and finding the right person. To me, finding the right therapist and the right psychiatrist is a little bit of trial and error, a little bit of chemistry, getting it right, and then continuing a long journey. So, for me, my psychiatrist, for example, is somebody who's been with me for over a decade now, right? And it works because our philosophies align, our conversation aligns, and that's not the only psychiatrist I have. So I have a second backup one also, because when emergency hits, you may need you may need to default to your backup, right? So you have to really put layers and layers. Therapy also, for me, my needs have changed from time to time, so I've changed therapists, and you need to find a match for yourself. So I would say two things: they are a lifeline. Second is, you need good chemistry. You need to find a match.
Right, right, right. I think that's beautifully said, because a lot of time that at least I have seen that in people is that they'll go to a therapist, possibly that wouldn't be a perfect match, and they'll be like, I don't think therapy is for me, or possibly I cannot do that. So that's something that you've put in very precisely, that you need to find the perfect match for you. Talking on to the same line.
Yeah, I cannot, in fact, no, I cannot disagree more with the therapy is not for me. In fact, I feel therapy is for everyone.
Absolutely.
Everyone must get therapy. I really, really believe that, because it's really like we don't hesitate having general physicians, or we don't hesitate going to the gym. A regular maintenance, I think, and therapy in today's day and age is emotional
Hmm.
maintenance. So I'm a big believer in that, and especially if you have mental health issues, you need a therapist and a psychiatrist. You need a team to work for you.
Right.
So I can like totally disagree with the person saying I don't need therapy or it's not for me.
I think
Yeah,
this
I don't think
possibly
that.
this conversation can go on and on, because I have heard, like being on this line, I have heard so much from people talking about, oh, why do I need a therapist? I am good by myself. Or what would they do? I have so many friends and my family supporting me. So the myth pretty much exists, and the notion that is there with regards to therapy still is, I think, not that correct, I feel personally. And talking about this, Abhishek, so do you feel that when you came out and when you told people that, okay, I think I'm struggling with something, so do you think that people possibly treated you in an unfair manner? I mean, of course, because of the lack of awareness that pretty much exists in and around mental health. And going back to 2007, I can't even imagine that, because Instagram right now, because of Instagram and all, काफी awareness हो चुकी है onto these lines, but तब वो भी नहीं था. So do you think that people, possibly there was some sort of stigma, and they didn't treat you the way you would like to be treated?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think with mental health, you have to make peace with the deep injustice of society that happens against any marginalized group. I think mentally ill people are deeply marginalized because society has a consensus on what is normal. And we are kind of deviances from normal, and that deviance is not appreciated. It's medicated, controlled, and really regulated. So, at one level, there is, I think, each mentally ill person has to accept the deep injustice that they're going to experience over a lifetime, and including the injustice of having to be, say, economically productive when your faculty doesn't even allow you to. And I'm a very functional user survivor, so I can speak on behalf of those who cannot, right? And so I'm speaking on their behalf, not really talking as myself. I'm very, very privileged. So there is deep injustice there, and there is stigma, right? There is stigma of one is from the professional world. I have been very fortunate to have employers who understood me. But there is deep stigma in the professional world. There is stigma in the family where you want to hush it and not talk about it. Like it's like a bad thing that's happened. Nobody wants to bring it up and pretend it never happened. So I would say there is deep stigma. 2007 was there, and it's sad that it's not really gone off still. And still the language of ये the crazy guy, mental है थोड़ा, psych उसको problem है, थोड़ा टेढ़ा है, all that language is still around, and it's slowly moving. I think it's slowly changing, but I think being mentally ill is making deep peace with the injustice of, yeah, I think you have to make peace with it. It's there's no way you can change all of it.
True. So, when, like you said, that a lot of times people say a lot of things. Like we say, लोगों का काम है कहना, but you continue doing what you are doing. So, at any point, did you feel that you were being sympathetic towards yourself, or you were possibly feeling bad for yourself that why me? Or, this is happening, it's okay possibly to, not just be going to office or something. How did you deal with this, if at all if at any time you faced this?
Yeah, I would say this goes through a cycle, right? The first step in that cycle is disbelief. Like, I can't believe this happened to me. So that was kind of my first phase. I can't believe my life's come crashing down. Then there is deep grief. Like, oh my God, my life has come crashing down. Then there is a strong, like, I have to come out of this as soon as possible, like almost violence against oneself to come out, motivate, apply all self-help, jo ho sakta hai. And then finally there is some degree of even giving up, like nahi ho payega. And then finally after that whole cycle there is some deep acceptance, self-sympathy, and I've gone through that whole cycle. But where I am right now, there is a lot of love and self-sympathy. There is a lot of care for myself. There's a lot of knowing that only I know my struggle. And it's like any other person actually, right? Only you know your own struggle. And that's true for people with mental health issues also. Ultimately, कितना ही कोई समझ पाएगा, एंड में तो हमें ही अपने आप के साथ जूझना है. सो वो खुद से प्यार है, सिंपैथी है, पेशेंस है कि we'll see it through. Me and myself will see it through.
Right.
So there is deep sympathy, yeah.
Right. So, talking about this, did you feel anything that existed during your childhood, any symptoms or anything, and possibly or your family members neglected it? Possibly, and at that time, if you had taken the correct care or the correct measures, you could have been at a different place. Did you ever feel that?
No, in the sense there was no childhood symptom, there is no family member. So for me, my onset was quite, even post onset, I couldn't find where this originated from. I mean, there was a depressive phase preceding my bipolar, which was left untreated because I never thought I could get depressed. So maybe treating the depressive phase at that time might have prevented it. But there was nothing in my childhood or family history, and mental health issues can just hit from anywhere. It need not necessarily be childhood or family. Though bipolar has a genetic correlation, and if it's in your genes, you're more likely to have it. But I mean, I've really looked for who's my bipolar ancestor, and I've been fairly unsuccessful. So must be like 4 or 5 generations away from me that I couldn't trace them. But yeah, I think when I was depressed pre my bipolar, I think diagnosing that depression, it was diagnosed, I guess, but not not medically diagnosed, but by somebody who knew it. But my own disbelief that how can I be depressed? Like depression happens to negative thinking people. I'm a very positive thinking person, so मुझे तो नहीं हो सकता है, right? And that, I think that was a point where maybe we could have prevented the onset of bipolar, maybe, but really like no guarantees.
So, of course, depression, anxiety, ये सब चीजों के बारे में already बहुत कुछ है जो बोला गया है. But bipolar is still something that is not spoken about. And, coming from a place that you are, would you also like to shed some light upon that how is it to, how is it that you are getting up every day, moving in with your day, and possibly back in 2007 when you got diagnosed, how was it back then?
Wow, that's again many questions, so I'm going to try and pick
I'm
one and
sorry,
answer, or
I
try to
just,
answer it in
it's
one.
just that I
No,
have
no
like
problems. I'll,
Instagram unfortunately has like a time limit, 1 घंटे में. So I have so much to honestly ask you, but I'm like, कैसे
no
कब
problem.
कहाँ?
I will answer it in a very simple way. It's like having a different car. I would not even say it's like having a dysfunctional car. If you have a normal car, you accelerate, you change gears, it goes faster, you put a brake, it goes slow. That's a normal person. With bipolar, you have a highly sensitive accelerator and a highly sensitive brake and a not so functional clutch. And I'll elaborate. Highly sensitive accelerator means if I start speeding up, and वो एकदम रेगुलर चल रहा है, थोड़ा दबाया तो 30, 40, 50, but the next stop after 50 is like 120 because suddenly the system tripped, and so you don't know where the system can trip. Like you speed up, but then suddenly it goes into a manic episode, so you can't speed up. But at the same time, if you try to slow it down, at some stage again it hits a barrier where it goes straight, the car comes to a halt, you go deep depression. सो दोनों साइड तकलीफ है बाइपोलर में. लाइक डिप्रेशन है तो पता है कि एक ही साइड पे धक्का मारना है, डाउन से अप लाना है मूड. बाइपोलर में ऊपर नीचे, इट्स लाइक यू नीड बैलेंस व्हील्स ऑन बोथ साइड्स. यू नीड लाइक डीप मूड स्टेबिलाइजर्स and you need to constantly monitor the mood, and if it goes up you need downers, if it goes down you need uppers. Like you have to really, that mix of medication has to keep on being fine tuned and modified based on where the mood is moving, right? So you could say it's the, I mean, I try to tell myself it's better than being depressed because at least you have a hypomanic phase where you feel happy, and a manic phase where you feel happy but everybody around you is gone, like freaks out, because manic is like full on psychotic. So I would say, yeah, it's a challenging condition to manage. Not as challenging as schizophrenia, but apart from schizophrenia, I would say I would contest for the second spot ahead of borderline personality disorder or generalized anxiety disorder. I would say, yeah, second toughest after schizo.
Right. So also talk.
And a psychotic episode actually mimics a schizophrenic episode. So it's quite terrifying because it's like you're not normally schizophrenic, but a psychotic episode is really close to a schizophrenic experience, based on what I've read and experienced. So it's quite, yeah, it's tough. Yeah.
Firstly, that beautiful explanation that you gave with the car thing, very beautifully said. I mean, I can't even imagine coming up with that explanation, but yeah, for layman, it's very precisely that it helps us understand things better, of course. But talking about the mood shift that you spoke about, that kabhi ekdam you're very happy, or there could be phases where you're feeling down. Do you think at some point that affected your productivity or your social life? So how did you manage that in that case?
It definitely affects my social life and productivity quite dangerously, I would say. It's quite difficult managing this. Was the first step is to accept. It's like accepting that I'm running a different car, and so I have to take a different route, or I have to set different expectations from myself, right? So that first step is really negotiation with oneself, which is hard, and really coming to some santulan within oneself. And then the next step is to say, okay, this is not really like driving a car. This is like wind surfing almost, where when the winds are favorable, I'm going to cruise, and when the winds are not favorable, I'm going to calm down. So it's like then I would move the metaphor from a car metaphor कि ठीक है मेरे पास कार है, ऐसी नहीं चल रही है, तो फिर मुझे रियलाइज करना है कि यार मेरे पास कार नहीं, यॉट है, और हवाएं चल रही है, और ये हवाएं मेरे कंट्रोल में नहीं है. तो जब हवा तेज चल रही है तब मैं किस तरह अपने सेल से उस तेज हवा का फायदा उठा के आगे चल सकता हूँ, और किस तरह जब हवा नहीं चल रही है तब मैं ग्राउंड हो सकता हूँ. So I try now surf the waves. So right now, for example, I'm in a hypomanic phase and I have an event coming up, so I have the energy of that event already. I'm feeling it, so I know I'm going hypomanic, which means I shouldn't get speeded up. But it would be unfair for me not to use that energy, that hypomanic energy, right? Because I can't anyway stop that energy. So it's really, so the productivity is not constant, and we live in a civilization and a world which expects you to constantly be productive, 9 to 5, 5 days a week. It ignores the rhythms. It ignores the rhythm. So I would say you become more rhythmic. You don't become like a machine factory. You're playing a rhythm. Now, not all professions let you honor your rhythm. Most professions expect you to show up like, tack, 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 tack.
Right.
But then you choose a profession, you choose a lifestyle that allows you to play your rhythm. And the profession I have chosen has a lot of optionality in it. It has optionality of when I show up, when I don't show up, or how much I can. So I always say that if 100 is the average productivity, my range is between 10 and 140. So 10 is the minimum I can guarantee. There are times when I'm at 140. Right now, I would say I'm at 120 in where I am. But this variability is hard to handle. It's an expensive. It's not easy to handle that variability. Yeah. So it affects productivity. Does it affect social life? Yes, especially when depressed. It affects like any other depressed person. So that when hypomanic or manic, it affects social life in a very strange way, because one is very confident of one's ideas. And so one really ends up evangelizing ideas which one may not follow through. क्योंकि वो manic hypomanic phase में लगता है सब कुछ हो सकता है. तो वो social relationships में people around have to calibrate कि भाई ये इस type का बंदा है, and now I can joke about it also कि हाँ अभी मैं hypomanic हूँ तो मुझे सब कुछ मुमकिन लग रहा है. So now people around me also have found their own adjustment to say this is the nature of Abhishek. That when he is hypomanic, he'll give ideas, some of them good, some of them nonsensical. But वो बोलेगा ठीक है, थोड़ा सुनना है, थोड़ा नहीं. So people around need to recalibrate. So that's also negotiation. I know this is a long answer, but I really wanted to spell this out as specifically
No,
as I
it's
could.
not at all long. Don't. I love the answers that you've been giving so far with your thing, and of course talking onto the lines that is there that we've spoken about today's topic. That I think you need to tell the viewers, why did you come up with this whole topic, the idea that had surviving the storms. Would you like to also shed some light upon that?
Surviving the storm. I think I say there are sun people and there are moon people. Sun people are the normal people who show up every day and more or less fixed. थोड़ा ही variant होता है. Moon people are like, they go through super cycles, right? And I'm a moon person. And now more and more moon people are coming out in the world and saying, hey, we are not sun people, we are moon people. Now when a storm comes, it doesn't matter whether there is sun or moon, there is darkness, right? And sometimes the clouds suddenly clear and there is a lot of light,
Right.
right? So storm जब आता है तब फर्क नहीं पड़ता है आप क्या हो, सब कुछ तहस नहस हो ही जाता है. तो मेरी जिंदगी में over the last 12 years that not 12 actually 14 years that I've had this condition, thrice I've crashed. Like I've had 3 huge storms. And the first one was the worst. It took away everything. The other 2 were also quite bad. How do you survive? How do you dust your clothes, recollect your life, and start from not where you had left, because the storm will leave you like 10 steps behind, and you continue your pilgrimage. So for me, surviving the storm is a very real idea. Each manic episode is a storm. Each depressive phase is a different kind of a storm. And you have no choice but to survive. So इसलिए user survivor बोलते हैं ना कि survive the storm. So I said, and for me this conversation is for people who are hit by storms. Some storms you can control, some life. So storm अपने हाथ में नहीं होता है.
Right.
आ जाता है बस.
सही, ये एकदम सही चीज बोली आपने. एंड जैसे कि आपने बोला, मतलब द कार, द एग्जांपल, उस कार में बहुत टाइम्स ऐसा भी होता है दैट यू आर नॉट द ओनली वन ड्राइविंग, देयर आर पीपल विथ यू ऑन द सीट. And talking onto those lines, your friends and your family are the ones that are with you onto your journey. So what do you think that they did in specific that worked for you? And now to look back onto it, What do you think that they could have done differently or possibly even avoided in that matter?
Well, it would definitely not be an understatement to say that they saved my life. I would have died. Uh, it's quite bad, right? Because when you are depressed and suicidal, I feel your risk of suicide is lesser क्योंकि तुम इतने दुखी हो कि तुम अपने आप को मारने की भी एनर्जी नहीं निकाल सकते.
Hmm.
बट जब तुम मैनिक और सुसाइडल हो तब तुम्हारे पास एनर्जी है कि भाई ये दुनिया तो छोड़ने वाला हूँ मैं, ये सच्ची दुनिया नहीं है, एंड सो ऑन. सो इट्स डेंजरस
Hmm.
फॉर मी. The I mean, yeah, there have been three such phases, right? Manic phases for me. Depressive, I'm still, it's safe. The manic phases, people around me have had to work really hard, really, really hard. It's literally like it takes a whole community to manage one person with bipolar, and a very connected and committed community which doesn't give up. So people around me have shown up, they have really rallied, they have really tolerated all my outbursts and all the nonsense that a manic person says. What what could have been done differently now over time? I'm like, maybe the community is not the best way to handle this. Maybe a person needs to get admitted into a care facility early on, because communities also wear out. थक जाते हैं. मतलब एक मैनिक पर्सन को संभालने में 10-15 लोग लग जाते हैं और वो लोग थक जाते हैं. So literally the idea is that there's a time to get medicated and get hospitalized in mania, and maybe it's earlier than I thought. So next time if I'm on the edge of manic, I won't mind going into a care facility and saying, "ठीक है, let me pass my whole mania here rather than at home." Right? So I think that apart, I think my community did not take therapy. Like they get traumatized by what happens to me. तो उनकी इतनी फाइट हो जाती है कि उनको थेरेपी लेनी चाहिए पर वो लेते नहीं. उनको लगता है कि ठीक है हम स्ट्रांग हैं. So I would really like next time I say that next time I'll give out therapy vouchers to people who took care of me, because they undergo so much. It's so hard for them.
True, true.
And what they should not do is process their stuff by talking to the person who got affected by it. Because therapy नहीं ली तो फिर उसको process करेंगे, सुनाएंगे जिसको mental health. People do that, no? They process their grief with the person who is actually affected. So I would say that's
That's
don't
a
do.
big no-no. Absolutely. So we've also received some comments which I'd like to read before we move on with our conversation. So of course, people are very, very happy to have you over here and see you after a very long time. And someone writes, Abhishek, you're a great friend and so fortunate to have come across you. I think I'm getting over reading these amazing comments. So beautifully said, Abhishek, and honoring your journey in finding the rhythm. I think in such, I couldn't read. Can you read that for me, please, Abhishek? If you possibly could read this comment. Shashank Kalra has written something.
I'm not. Hello, Shashank, dear friend. Let me see. Where do I get to the chat? I'm so not Insta aware that I don't even know where
थोड़ा
do I
सा
get the
ऊपर
chat.
है तो
Last. हाँ हाँ. Okay. Get it. I'm being able to scroll it. Solid sunset. Ranjana. No, I'm not being able to get
solid
to
sunset के
the
ऊपर.
chat. Yeah. And honoring your journey in finding the rhythm and contribute in such a big way to the world.
Oh yeah, I just couldn't read that title.
वो typo होगा.
Yeah, love the idea of therapy vouchers. I think, yeah, people have been loving your idea of therapy vouchers because, for the fact, I know that caretakers also really need to seek help if they feel that there is something that they can't process onto those lines. Abhishek, also talking about this, how do you?
So sorry, just one quick thing I need to bring in. The caregiver experience is more difficult than the caregiver themselves realize. It is really hard. One, to watch someone suffer and not be able to help it. Two, to be at the receiving end of all the hatred or the anger or the everything that a manic person, for example, goes through, right? And then to show up and find themselves insufficient, not being able to hold their boundaries, the guilt of not showing up enough. Like the caregiver experience is extremely difficult. And at times I would say it's probably even more difficult than the person suffering. Like it's, yeah, it's hard to compare. It's that
Right.
bad. So I just wanted to bring that up, that caregiving is really hard.
Right. So also talking about this, like a lot of times when you are possibly having an episode, you are not in that state to decide that okay, you possibly need to go to a therapist or seek a therapist because you feel everything is possibly fine or I'm just in a good state right now. So kya hi problem hai? I'm just being happy. So what do you think as caregivers they should be doing? Should they push you to therapy or should they just let yourself be in your element? Or what is it that they should be doing in that case?
Well, having gone through this 3 times, I would say they should take total control and do whatever it takes, whether it's therapy or hospitalization.
Hmm.
Because being mentally ill means I'm not able to tell when I'm speeding up.
Hmm.
Varna, if I could tell, I would have taken help. So in my head, the world is perfectly fine.
Hmm.
I'm rocking it. मुझे दुनिया मतलब अलग level पे समझ में आ रही है, right? And it's so real that it's impossible to detach oneself from that. I have really applied all my cognitive power to know like इससे कैसे पता चले कि ये हो रहा है, पर नहीं पता चल पाता.
Hmm.
Most of the times वो हो जाता है, right? So I would say that people around really need to be empowered by me to say I trust you and I'll not hold it against you if you take decisions which are against me, because I trust you that you will take it in the best interest. There have been times when I've been physically had to be restrained or hospitalized, and initially there's a lot of anger against people who took those decisions because they're traumatic. Then you have to give the benefit of doubt to the people around you.
Yeah, true. So also, I mean, uh, when that's the case and you have people around you, so do you think that the way you engage with them, like with the people who do not belong to the spectrum of having a mental illness, is it any different, or do you think that there should be like group therapies also that should exist when it comes to that, so that like you spoke about कहकशा, तो वैसा होना चाहिए? Do you think that's the need of the hour?
So Kehkasha was peer-led support, right? So it would be really like we would, in fact, we said no counselors or therapists. We started with allowing therapists in, but that would kill the conversation because there was an expert in the room.
Right.
So peer-led support is literally like saying that हम सबको same दर्द है, and we'll just share our dard. And in sharing that dard, you are finding that wow, I'm not a weirdo. What's happening to me is happening to someone else also. And it's so relieving just to know that my experience is not as unique, because it's a very lonely experience to be mentally ill. It's like nobody else feels the way I feel. But to find even one person who feels something vaguely in that pin code is so relieving. Like it's like okay, there is another person, so I'm not like the only crazy one, right? So this just इतनी राहत मिलती है just to find another person who's facing the same suffering. Like there is such love and solidarity, so it's priceless, and yeah, nothing comes close.
Right. So what is it that, of course, जैसे आपने बोला कि it was like a no-no policy later to have a therapist or any mental health professional onto those lines. Maybe because for obvious reasons, because we wanted to have that close discussion with the people who are in the same journey as you. So what do you think that Filhal in like the times that we are living in, what is it that the people need to be more sensitive about in that case?
Well, one, people need to be very sensitive about what they're feeling in their internal states, because it's very easy to start going into loops of negative thinking, which leads to depression, or if you're bipolar prone, then loops of positive thinking that may take you to mania. So one is to be catching your loops in time. Second is not weaponizing mental illness. By weaponizing, I mean using mental illness as an excuse, using mental illness as a pretext. It's a very thin line between when I use my mental illness to diagnose myself and take help, and when I start using my mental illness as a proxy for getting sympathy and attention. And it's such a thin line that only the person himself can say where they are on that line. And it's really important to be mindful that mental illness doesn't become an excuse, right? And you're accountable to yourself. So I think that. And third is people around need to be really sensitive, because this mentally ill person might actually kill themselves. It's not just saying it, you will lose that person, right? Like not to take mental illness lightly. Right now, like there's an epidemic of mental health challenges and so on. And fourth, I can't resist the fourth, is that this problem is systemic. It is not related to only a person. It has to do with the way capitalism and late capitalism is showing up in our lives. the way we are being advertised to, the way social media is working, and
Hmm.
so गलती सिर्फ हमारी नहीं है.
Right, right. So, ऐसा बहुत टाइम होता होगा कि you come across new people in your lives, and of course, professionally and personally, making new friends and joining a new place, like your workplace. So, is there something that you do time to time to take care so that people around you can also be cautious, and you tell them out, like when you're possibly going for an interview, that this could be the thing, and yeah, this could possibly be the thing, and I am going through this period. So, do you do that? Do you talk about it very openly to your people professionally and personally?
Yeah.
And do you think that people should?
Uh,
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So,
Go ahead.
do you think everyone should do that? Because for a fact, I know that जितना stigma mental health का है, उससे शायद थोड़ा कम it's about the LGBTQ community also. तो जब वो लोग openly नहीं बोल पाते when they are going at the workplace, so how do you think that people should really be open about this?
So, yeah, the LGBTQ experience is not so available for me at all. The mental health experience for me is a lot about constantly managing expectations of people around me. So, I really have to let people around me know. Fortunately, the people around me have been with me now for like a long time. Like everybody has been around more than 5 years, right? And so, in fact, if anything, वो मुझे बता देते हैं, मैं उनको बताऊं उसके पहले कि अभिषेक तेरा एनर्जी डाउन लग रहा है, and then I'm like, oh yes, you caught it before me. So mostly मेरे आसपास वो ecosystem है which catches it before me. But I would say you need to announce. Like in my early days, I would actually drop a mail to my close circle saying, guys, I'm feeling a little high on energy. I'm doing this, but please stay on alert. And so, especially the highs, because lows are okay. Like I again say, lows are personal suffering and immense suffering, but there's no potential for damage or harm to others. But the high is a dangerous place because it can escalate into something very, very harmful to others also. So I would drop a mail. I would let people know कि भाई ये हालत चल रही है
Right,
अभी.
right.
So yeah.
So also I received a question from one of our users yesterday that said that the stigma towards having a condition is very high where one is considered unsafe or someone who cannot be dependable. How can survivors help in breaking the stigma attached to mental health and sensitize others?
See, I think first is to realistically assess what can you count on me for, right? So as Abhishek, I can say, oh, you can count on me to deliver a workshop even if I'm feeling low. You can rely on me for that minimum. जो 10 मैंने बोला था ना, 10 to 140 में. The lowest reliable denominator which I'll not back out of. I need to figure that for myself first, because that's the guarantee I can give you. That's the only guarantee I can give you, right? So you have to calibrate your minimum first for yourself, and then assure that this minimum will get honored. For some, that minimum may be 0, and that is that, right? So then you are actually not dependable because you can move to 0 productivity and work will stop. It's very hard for people on the other end also, because I'm also on the other end of dealing with people with mental health conditions, right? So you calibrate your minimum. That's kind of step 1. Second is then you negotiate the expectations realistically with the other people. You have to negotiate. You don't have to overcommit. And at the same time, you have to commit to not using mental health as an excuse. Both are problematic, right? So I calibrate, I set expectations, and then I deliver. I have to consistently keep pushing myself. तो क्या है कि लोग देख लेते हैं कि यार इसकी तबीयत खराब है, फिर भी ये फाइट मार रहा है. लोगों में वो इंसानियत होती है. लोग, you have to count that people have that insaniyat in them to say कि भाई, rest. It's okay. I can see you are honest. You're trying your best. So people are very mature and caring and kind. Honestly, like at least that's been my experience of people around. So you have to trust that लोग भी समझते हैं. ऐसा नहीं कि they're out there to get you or punish you for being mentally ill. If anything, they're very kind and gentle. But अगर तुम बोलोगे ही नहीं तो पता कैसे चलेगा कि ये हो रहा है तुम्हारे साथ. And ज़्यादातर mentally ill people feel that किसी और को मुझे मेरा अनुभव समझ में ही नहीं आएगा, मैं क्या बताऊं, they go into that martyrdom mode. That's harmful and that's very expensive, right? Even if others don't understand your experience, they still have the capacity to empathize. So you have to relate to people that this is happening to me. It's really important. Yeah.
Right. So Abhishek, in this journey that you've spoken about so far, what is it that helped you and possibly the people that who supported you, what are the few things that they did? So also maybe some things that our viewers, if they are caretakers, they could also stick and abide to for the people that they have in their lives.
Well, what helped me is patience, a lot of inner work, more patience, more inner work, more patience, more inner work. This that, right? And taking help. Um, what helped for caregivers was to read up and understand, right? Everybody who's dealing with a mentally ill person and others also need to understand the nature of what a mental health condition
Hmm.
is. And I was very fortunate that people around me really educated themselves on the medications, on the risks, on how to tell. And also I think caregivers need to
Hmm.
educate themselves, one. Two, which is paradoxical, is they need to set their own boundaries very clearly.
Hmm.
बिकॉज केयर गिविंग में आप पूरा बह के मतलब आपकी ज़िंदगी छोड़ छाड़ के इट बिकम्स अबाउट द पर्सन विद द मेंटल हेल्थ कंडीशन इफ यू रियली नॉट वॉचफुल
Hmm.
and years can pass and you find, oh, what did I become in life? Oh, last 5 years all I've been is a caregiver.
Right.
Right? So caregivers need to set boundaries. It's so important that वो बह ना
Hmm.
जाए
Hmm.
caregiving में,
Hmm.
right? And third is, yeah, caregivers really need to act in a fiduciary position.
Hmm.
It's hard, but sometimes caregivers need to take decisions on behalf of people who are mentally ill because the mentally ill person is not behaving
Hmm.
rationally.
Hmm.
And so caregivers have to trust and act in the best interest of life, right? What's good for life.
Right.
Sometimes that may not be the best for the mentally ill
Hmm.
person.
Hmm.
बट अगर वो सुसाइडल हो रहा है तो आपको उसको केयर फैसिलिटी में डालना
Hmm.
पड़ेगा. अब उसको नहीं जाना होगा क्योंकि किसको जाना है केयर फैसिलिटी में, वो जेल जैसा फीलिंग आता है. बट ठीक है, अगर वो सुसाइडल है उसकी ज़िंदगी बचाने के लिए आपको डिसीजन लेना
Hmm.
पड़ेगा,
Hmm. Hmm.
राइट? सो या, सो इट्स या, केयर गिविंग इज़ हार्ड मैन, केयर गिविंग इज़
Right.
हार्ड.
So, like you mentioned, that it's been over a decade now, and has the way that you wanted to be supported changed ever since then? मतलब हर टाइम पे कुछ नया रियलाइजेशन होता है कि शायद ऐसे मुझे सपोर्ट करो, या शायद तुम ये कर सकते हो मेरे लिए, ये वो मेरे लिए शायद थोड़ा बेटर होगा. So something that you could talk about onto those lines.
इट्स गॉन थ्रू मेनी सीजन्स यार. देयर हैज बीन अ सीजन वेयर आई एम लाइक मुझे कोई हेल्प नहीं चाहिए, मैं सब संभाल लूंगा.
Hmm.
एट वन स्टेज इट्स बीन लाइक अ क्राई बेबी फेज, लाइक कोई मेरी प्रॉब्लम समझता नहीं है, तुमको किसी को समझ में नहीं आता है, मेरे लिए कितना टफ है. एट सम स्टेज इट हैज बीन लाइक ट्रीट मी लाइक एन अडल्ट and a rational person,
Hmm.
even though when mentally ill that's not the case. So it's gone through several phases, right? Now what has happened is I'm very actively supported without having to ask for support,
Hmm.
because the ecosystem around me has also learned what it is to have a mentally ill person in their community.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
तो वो एक संतुलन बन गया है, राइट? सो आई एम सपोर्टेड विदाउट आस्किंग फॉर
Hmm.
इट. इट्स लाइक नाउ आई एम अ पार्ट ऑफ द विलेज, लाइक द विलेज डजंट हैव टू रिकॉन्फिगर इटसेल्फ.
Right.
आई एम happily embodied in those
Hmm.
relationships. So it's a fortunate place to be in,
Hmm.
right? What I would say as a takeaway for listeners is to ask for help, because people are not mind readers.
Hmm.
Somebody may seem very happy but may be completely destroyed from within and just trying to put up a brave front,
Hmm.
right? So you have to, people who are experiencing trouble need to ask for
Hmm.
help, राइट? इसको ईगो इश्यू बनाने की कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है कि यार मैं हेल्प कैसे मांगू. यू हैव टू आस्क फॉर हेल्प.
Hmm.
यू आर एक्सपीरियंसिंग समथिंग डिफिकल्ट, यू हैव टू आस्क.
Mm-hmm. Right, right, right. So, Abhishek, before we conclude, any top three do's and don'ts that you would like to talk about when in and around a survivor?
Wow, what are three do's and don'ts? I can't talk about any user survivor, but I can talk about
Yes,
me.
that should
uh,
work too.
empathy not sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
लाइक दया नहीं चाहिए, मगर अक्नॉलेजमेंट ज़रूर होना चाहिए कि भाई इसकी फाइट है, दिस पर्सन हैज़ अ चैलेंज.
Mm-hmm.
सो आई वुड से या, empathy not sympathy is one. Two is vigilance. डीप विजिलेंस, लाइक शार्प विजिलेंस के अगर इसका रिदम जा रहा है, ऑफ जा रहा है तो गड़बड़ है, इसको बता दो, बिकॉज दे कैन टेल अर्लियर देन मी,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I would say that's a second do. And third is to not, I mean, to do good caregiving. Good caregiving would mean set your boundaries, do your own work with your own therapist, not with the person who's
Mm-hmm.
affected, and so on. So good caregiving, there is healthy caregiving,
Right.
so doing that as well. Yeah.
And don'ts?
Don't take threats lightly.
Hmm.
Like लाइक सीरियसली मरने की जब इच्छा हो रही होती है तब इतना गुस्सा आ रहा होता है आसपास वालों के ऊपर के इट्स लाइक इनको सबक सिखाने के लिए मैं मर जाता हूँ. इट्स दैट बैड राइट. लाइक यूर लाइक इनको तो मैं बताता हूँ, लेट देम फील द रिग्रेट फॉर देयर होल लाइफ. आई एम गोना किल माई सेल्फ सो दैट. So don't take threats lightly because there are real risks when people are, particularly in mania, I think, more than depression. That so don't take threats lightly. Like have to do. Second is trust medication and or rather I would say don't. अभी don't की तरह frame करना है तो I would say don't skip medication. डोंट स्किप मेडिकेशन. चाहे आप कितना भी ऑल्टरनेटिव थेरेपी में बिलीव करते हो, वो थेरेपिस्ट आपका बहुत वर्ल्ड क्लास थेरेपिस्ट हो, some things require medication. There are chemical imbalances, so don't skip medication. I can not like repeat that enough. I think I've learned the hard way that medication needs to be honored and as honored as possible. So I would say don't that. And third is don't go. And this is for कौन सा केयर गिवर था या यूजर सर्वाइवर के लिए पूछ रहे थे आप? केयर गिवर के
आप
लिए ना.
दोनों के लिए बोल दो, आई एम हैप्पी विद इट.
हाँ, खाली just don't get into the self sympathy, right? Like I would say don't weaponize mental illness. Just because you're mentally ill doesn't mean you can go you can use that as an excuse. वो बहाना नहीं बन जाना चाहिए, right? You have to be very vigilant. You have to claim your benefits also when you need to. But just there's a very thin line, and I can't stress that enough because it's a very personal, your negotiation with yourself on how much you will push yourself. It's a very very personal negotiation.
Right, right.
It's really important that we do it honestly.
True. I think with what you've said, this one thing that comes into my mind that I read somewhere, that people who are possibly seeking for help are not attention seekers but support seekers. So this is something that everyone should really understand and take it seriously, that they are not wanting your attention but just your support, love, and something that really gets everyone going is the hope. Possibly, if I'm right, am I right, Abhishek? Like the hope to get better.
No, I'll come back. No, they need help, but sorry, you. Why don't you
No,
complete
no,
and then
I
I'll
think
clarify
Nana,
what I was
you
saying.
tell me, what are your thoughts about that?
I think the need for attention, the need for hugs,
Mm. I think I lost
the
you out
appetite.
there.
Hello,
Yeah,
am I back?
yeah, you're back.
So I was saying that the need for attention, the need for hugs and
Hmm.
holding are very legitimate
Hmm.
needs, you know. And किसी की appetite ज़्यादा होती है, किसी की कम होती है. कोई एक रोटी खाता है, कोई 3 रोटी खाता है.
Hmm.
So people with mental health have a higher appetite for hugs, holding, attention, love,
Hmm.
and maybe even power. And they need that. So give it to them. This is like that family member of yours who needs that extra dose of oxytocin. So they need long
Hmm.
hugs. They need attention. So sometimes life would just be easier if you would give the attention rather than play politics around it, right? Like somebody needs attention. Let's be honest about it. Give them the attention and let's keep it light, not make it a whole dramatic thing जहाँ वो कुछ twisted तरीके से attention मांग रहा है और हम भी फिर एक twisted form of attention दे रहे. क्यों ये drama?
True.
Why can't we just acknowledge that different human beings have different needs, and here's a breed of human beings who feels more deeply perhaps or is chosen by nature to have an imbalance. So naturally उसकी need अलग है, उसको वो hugs, holding, attention की need है. And can we just acknowledge and सहज दे दो उसको, and of course help. Sure, but sometimes that help is very simple. All they need is one long 20-minute hug.
Absolutely. So I'll just, before we conclude and I end this, I'll just kind of go through the little comments that have come in. Just give me a second. Scrolling up is.
And hello to a lot of my dear friends, very dear friends who
Yes, I
still
miss
now.
talking and listening to you, Abhi. Lots and lots of love. Just a second. This thoda is a little difficult scrolling and trying to read in between. Very expensive indeed. So possibly when you were talking about, I don't know, one second. And you've of course gotten a lot of hearts coming your way from all the people. So keeping that in mind, thank you so much, Abhishek, for doing this and talking about your
Thanks a lot.
journey.
Thank you.
It really means a lot to me and of course to all our viewers. And also just a little thing to all our viewers about IEC, since this is a collaboration with IEC. They have been striving and working towards helping people all throughout, even in the pandemic. So if at all you feel the need, please feel free to reach out to them. I'm going to write about their details, the contact details in the comment section on the IGTV. Feel free to reach out. And thank you so much, Abhishek. Bye. Take care.
Yes, just want to close with a full endorsement for IEC for देयर लेबर ऑफ लव जो काम करते हैं वो एकदम श्रद्धा और पवित्रता से करते हैं, और एक्सपर्टीज से, ऑफ कोर्स एक्सपर्टीज बहुत जगह पे है, बट आई थिंक श्रद्धा की कमी है. सो आई वुड से आई सी दैट एज अ labor of love work. So I would definitely want to thank and endorse IC on this one. Thanks for having
Thank
me.
you so much. Bye. Take care.
Thank you so much. See you. Thanks a lot.